Hello, hello. Welcome to the Workplace Wellbeing Summit, which is a free event that we're putting on all week as part of World Wellbeing Week, which runs this entire week. So you can join us every day, Monday through Friday at 1 p.m. UK summertime. And you'll be able to see a whole range of excellent speakers. So thanks for joining today. We are doing things a little bit differently because last year we did this event on Zoom. This year we thought we would try something different. So we're streaming it currently on YouTube and also on LinkedIn. If you have any comments, questions, either today or at any point during the week, on LinkedIn, please do share them in the live chat and we'll be able to reference them, come back, answer your questions. And on LinkedIn, I'd be curious. I'm not sure if it will work on LinkedIn. It might do. But again, please feel free to throw your questions into the chat. So yeah, join us every single day this week. Let me give you a quick run through of what you can expect, and then we will get into today's workshop, which is with me, Sophie Coulthard from FidlLeaf. So if you joined us last year, you will know that you can expect some excellent speakers this week. And we do try to cover topics that reach the full spectrum of what workplace wellbeing could look like for you and your company. So last year we did an all-day event. This year is an all-week event with a different session at 1 p.m. every day of this week. Now, I know we're going to be competing with Wimbledon during your lunch times, and I actually live walking distance to Wimbledon. So I am also going to be keeping an eye, and I will share any thoughts on that as we go through the week. All of these sessions are recorded. You will get sent all of the recordings at the start of next week for every session. So if you can't make every one, do not worry. Today you're with me. As I mentioned, I'm Sophie from FidlLeaf, and I'll also just be hosting and moderating some of the sessions for the rest of the week. Tomorrow, we will be looking at flexible working and how to build shared experience when teams might be dispersed. So that's going to be a really interesting topic if flexible working is something that you are looking at. Wednesday, we are focused on sustainability. And personally, I'm really interested to see how companies can incorporate this into their wellbeing strategy. So that's going to be a really good panel discussion on Wednesday. Thursday is all about stress, and it's particularly for HR leaders. It is a really excellent presentation and it is packed full of value. I've seen this workshop delivered before, so I had to invite Amy on this week. And then Friday is mindfulness with a difference. So this is one that you can invite your entire team to. And I promise you can forget everything that you knew about mindfulness with this session, and it will end with a DJ set. So what more could you want on a Friday? So bringing you some music and some fantastic speakers this week. Right, so let's get started. Here we go. As I said, I'm hosting today. If you're in HR, L&D, if you're a wellbeing champion, then this session is for you. Please do pop a hello into the chat if you're watching on YouTube. I'd love to know that that's working. And if you have any questions at all, throughout this session, I'll try to pause at relevant points and answer any questions from you. I'll also probably make this screen a little bit bigger for you as we go through. So, very brief intro from me. I am one of the co-founders of FidlLeaf. We are a wellbeing and personal development platform for companies. So if you are looking to improve your workplace wellbeing initiatives, then please do go and check us out. But don't do it yet, do it later. And at the heart of our platform is a simple online assessment that's based on Nobel Prize nominated science. This assessment is used to measure various aspects of wellbeing in employees, and companies and employees also get access to support and development tools from within the platform. For companies, We share anonymized data to help inform their wellbeing initiatives and wider company plans. As we've already got a comment from Sarah referencing the session on Friday. Friday DJ session sounds great. Yes, it's going to be awesome. And I'm actually glad because I had a moment just a second ago where I thought, I hope I'm not on mute. So I'm guessing that you can hear me from that, which is great. So I was thinking about what would be useful to focus on when putting this agenda today, when I was putting the agenda together. And I figured a train the trainer type of session would be great for giving you some exercises that you can take back and try with your team. I am going to start with a bit of research and a bit of data and share with you some of the reasons why you should be incorporating these type of sessions into your wellbeing plan. And I'm just checking the screen. Yes, everything's looking good. Hopefully you should be able to read all of that. So first of all, some of the barriers or maybe reasons why you might not have been looking at personal development until now. And I've spoken to companies who've said that diversity and inclusion has really just kind of shot up the HR priority list, and well-being as such has sort of fallen to one side really, or it's been less of a priority in the past few months. So I do hope today that I can get this back on the radar for you. And I also know that a lot of companies are still finding their feet when it comes to things like hybrid working, and sort of understanding how that's going to look like with people kind of in and out of the office. So I do believe that embracing personal development can help to build that bridge, build that connectivity with teams that might be a little bit more dispersed. Maybe you've tried some social events on Zoom and had a feeling that they just don't really work that well. And I think by maybe including some personal development initiatives in virtual sessions, then that could bring people together in a way that integrates kind of work and the personal at the same time. Maybe less pressure on it being a social event, as it were. And then finally, we also hear people say that a lot of wellbeing initiatives they just find to be a bit fluffy. So, no offense, but yoga, meditation, coffee mornings, they might be nice, but it's difficult to measure the impact that they have on employees. Do they actually support well-being, or are they just nice to haves? And these are some of the challenges that I hear people share when it comes to personal development. So I want to share this snippet with you from a report that just came out, and I think that this really captures our ethos, certainly, that work and life can never be truly separate. So you can read it for yourself, but I think the relationship between well-being and engagement is vital because how people experience work influences their lives outside of work, and overall well-being influences life at work. And I think that the more you can support people in what we might call the personal stuff, as well as things like skills training and professional development, then the better. Employees who feel that their company is truly supporting them to flourish, to thrive, they will be more engaged in the workplace. And kind of to bring this together, I just sort of drew out a little model that sort of made sense to me. So I hope it helps you. That if you can make personal development not just part of the wellbeing plan, but part of their whole company culture, then it gets picked up on and it gets embraced by people. I'm going to show you why that is important. And I'm going to show you what areas to focus on and how it has a direct impact on work performance and company culture. So you can see how this sort of well-being and engagement piece really, really fit together here on the screen. So, what is personal development? Let's start with perhaps the obvious. And if you Google it, it really does incorporate a lot of things. But these are the 10 things that we focus on at FidlLeaf. These are areas that are measured by our assessment. We use the assessment is backed by science called axiology that measures these behaviors, if you like, in people. So I'm sure if you looked at these sort of 10 areas on the screen and you picked out any of these areas and thought about your team and thought, could they do with some development in this area, whichever one you're looking at now on the screen, you'd probably say yes, they could do with some development or support, or maybe some stand out to you more than others. So you can actually see from the coloured circles to the right-hand side of these 10 areas, there are 3 here that are in orange. And this is actual data from one of our clients. This is a snippet of one of their dashboards. And for them, these 3, which are in orange, would be the 3 areas that they would now focus on in terms of collective personal development for the team, because these are 3 areas that, you know, a collection of the team are perhaps struggling with, or perhaps weaker on. I don't like to use the word weaker, but hopefully that makes sense. So you can see the 10 areas on the screen. And to give you an idea of how the pandemic has impacted, I've just picked out self-regard as an example to show you here. So you can see that the sort of circle on the right-hand side is pre-COVID self-regard data, how people look after themselves, how they feel about themselves. And then we also have during or post-COVID, let's say. I think this data was snapshotted at the end of last year. And you can see the gap there. So this is literally 2 years ago versus now. And we've also seen big differences, so similar sort of gaps, let's say, on the graph in things like self-criticism, which is currently 32% worse than it was 2 years ago, and personal stress, so being able to handle stress in your own life, 27% worse. So these are not just areas that need development, they are areas that have seen significant shift since or during the pandemic. And what I've heard a lot of people say in the last few weeks in particular is that they feel that their staff seem to be languishing. Languishing seems to be this word that just really, really sums up a really accurate description, I think. It's not necessarily burnout on its own. It's not necessarily kind of one particular thing. It's that all of these well-being areas are down. And obviously we've picked that out in our data. It's almost like the batteries are down. And unfortunately, there might not be an overnight fix to this. But I do hope you're starting to see how addressing some of these areas and starting to incorporate personal development into your well-being plan can make a difference. Hopefully, that rings some true. Fantastic. So we have a comment here that says this has been evident in our team since the pandemic. So yeah, and I think I've heard that word languishing a few times recently, and I just feel like it's a really accurate sum up. And obviously our data reflects that as well. But we're going to take a look at high performers now, because this is another area that we have looked at in general. And what we found is that personal well-being really does power work performance. So this is data from around about 5,000 people of who have been identified as high performers within their organizations. And the data is comparing them to people who obviously haven't been identified as high performers, average performers, if you like, average workers. Couldn't figure a different way to say that. But what you can see from what's on the screen is that personal well-being, as I said, it really, really does power work performance. So people assume that high performers are tough on themselves, but this really isn't the case. Potentially they are more resilient and they take failures better. Potentially they could have the same stressors as other people, but their coping ability is stronger. So in fact, by working on personal well-being, by starting to include personal development into your well-being plan, and some of these areas that we can see on screen right now, you're also helping to build high performers. But obviously the extra benefit, or the side benefit, or certainly if you have to go to any stakeholders and kind of pitch this to them, this is the benefit. And obviously this is all backed by data. So as I said, these sessions are recorded. You will be able to come back and scribble those stats down if you want to, if you do need to go and sort of pitch someone higher up for you to include this within your wellbeing plan. And just to really summarize why all of this is important before we get into the actual exercises, research from Deloitte found that companies who take a proactive approach to workplace wellbeing and deliver company-wide targeted training alongside online programs or individual counseling type sessions, coaching, actually see a much higher return on investment. So that is kind of solid research from Deloitte that is essentially saying just having an EAP is not enough. And it was actually amazing that what they found when you get into the detail of these company-wide targeted training sessions. And then some research from ZETI from this year, which found that 87% of millennials, and obviously they are the largest portion demographic in the workplace at the moment, rate professional career growth and developmental opportunities as important to them. So we really are hitting a lot of things by including what might seem relatively simple into your wellbeing plan. Personal development exercises, or kind of starting to build this culture of personal development through the organization. So now you're hopefully completely sold on building personal development into your wellbeing plan. So let's go. So this is what I'm going to do now for the rest of the session. I'm going to run through 3 exercises today that you can take back and host and run for your team. And what I will say is, please involve your wellbeing champions. This is a really great way of getting them involved, especially if they're enthusiastic. They could run these. They could be run virtually. They could be run in person. All of these sessions are not something that kind of really dive deep into mental health, let's say, where you feel like you would want somebody professional to run them. They are fairly light, fun, practical exercises. And what I'm going to do is explain the objectives of each exercise, and then I will run it as if you are the participants. I'll probably run them a little bit quicker than I would normally run them. But what I encourage you to do is take part right now as if you were a participant. I think that that's the best way to learn. Take part yourself. So please do grab a pen and paper if you need to. Now, don't worry too much about remembering every single step, because as I said, this is recorded. I'm sure you're not going to go away and run this immediately today. So you probably would want to watch the exercise back to feel confident running it. So take part as a delegate, let's say, or as a participant, and think about how you might, change something potentially, or run it a way that works for your team. If you have been to any of our workshops before, we actually ran a free workshop nearly every month during the pandemic, during the main sort of lockdown. You may have seen these exercises already, but I don't see any reason why you couldn't take these and run these for your own team. So a really nice, simple one to start. This is an absolute classic exercise for us, and I always run this for any workshop that I host, normally at the start, because I think it really helps people to understand this relationship, let's say, between personal well-being and work performance. So it's fairly quick, it's effective. I would say that this is a great way to start a week or start a meeting, or perhaps at the end of the week on a Friday. Something visual, something quick that starts to get your team thinking about why this stuff is important. So grab yourself a pen and paper, and I will run this now for you as if you were my team, and I'm taking you through it. So great way to kind of launch personal development initiatives with your team and get them to really understand it. So really simple. I'd like to start by drawing these 2 stacked rectangles. And I'm going to describe something, and I want you to take a moment to reflect before doing anything else. So don't start colouring anything in yet. What we're going to do is we are going to think about how much we're going to fill these 2 rectangles. So the top rectangle is going to represent the energy that you give to external things. So this can include work. And obviously, most of us, I imagine, give most of our energy to work, to others, to childcare, to looking after family. So imagine everything that goes outwards from you. If you give all of those things 100% of your energy, it would fill that rectangle completely. But as I said, don't do it yet. Think about it for a second first. And then the bottom rectangle is going to be filled to represent the energy that you put back into yourself. So what do you do that's purely for you? Hobbies, self-care, taking time for yourself, getting to know yourself, if you like, truly being you. How is that energy distributed? So think about how you might fill these two rectangles. And this is how to fill them in. So with each rectangle, start from the middle and work your way outwards. So you're just literally scribbling, colouring in, felt tip if you've got one. So colour them in as full as the energy that you put into that area. So just a reminder, that top one is for the energy you put externally. It says work, but it could also include other things that where your energy goes externally. And the bottom one is only for yourself. So I'm guessing everybody's going to be sort of scribbling and filling those in at the moment. So obviously, very simple exercise, colouring in some boxes. And like I said, a full box means you put 100% energy into that area, a bit like a battery, you could think of this. And how do they look? Now, what I would say is once you've finished scribbling, sit back and look at them. And this may automatically give you some cause for reflection. But I'm going to bring this to life for you a little bit more now by talking about what this would ideally look like. A metaphor, if you will. And I often describe the ideal shape as looking a little bit like a wedding cake. So you can see the wedding cake here on the screen. And the ideal wedding cake has a bottom tier that can support the top tier. So this is where we're getting into this. This is why we're doing this. The ideal wedding cake has a bottom tier that can support that top tier. At the very least, they would be the same size, but ideally, that bottom tier would be full enough to be able to support that top tier. So does yours look like this? I'd love to see in the comments. Maybe you've done this exercise before, so you knew what it was going to say. Maybe since you did it last time, this might have shifted and changed for you. So does your wedding cake look like this? Okay, no, no, with exclamation marks. So perhaps it looks a little bit more like this. Somebody once described theirs to me in the comments on a session as a toothpick supporting a brick. Very visual there, or maybe it looks somewhere in between. And what I will say is, don't be embarrassed or ashamed if your wedding cake wouldn't support itself like the one here. I've mentioned, we use this science in our tool in FidlLeaf, and what we found is that for this area, when it's measured by that science, an upside down wedding cake is the case for over 90% of people to some degree. So it might not be, the toothpick scenario, but what does this mean? Firstly, it shows that most of your energy is likely going to work, to others, and what's actually left for you. I'm sure everybody is familiar with the expression about putting on your own gas mask on before helping others on an airplane. That's a nice visual one that we can all relate to. And the wedding cake, I think, adds to that because it shows you why. Because what would happen if you had a real cake like this? It could collapse. It could tip over. And depending on how unstable that bottom tier, that foundation is, it will affect the success of the top tier. That bottom tier determines whether that top tier can hold itself up. So I think that the wedding cake is a really great visual representation of how putting our energy into ourselves and our personal well-being actually supports us to get more out of work, but also out of life as well. So if we have that solid foundation, if we put that energy into ourselves, we have a foundation to support us, yes, to perform and to get more out of work and to be able to give ourselves more fully to others. So how does everybody feel looking at this? So I'm getting some comments here. Yes, my cake would definitely topple, somebody is saying. Yeah, I mean, is your cake at risk of collapse right now? This, like I say, really, really simple exercise that just starts to get you thinking, not only about how it's important to give that energy back to yourself, but also how it connects it to work performance. So if you have got people who are not interested in all this well-being stuff, or perhaps they felt a bit almost turned off by the mental health conversations because they don't feel like it applies to them, An exercise like this helps bring it back into almost like that work performance context, which I know some people would be more keen on, because if they feel like, it will help me achieve this or meet these sales targets or whatever it might be, they might be a little bit more open to this type of exercise, let's say. So, the important thing to think about when you look at this is what would fill the bottom of your wedding cake? What do you need to see that foundation grow? So, worth some thinking there. Actually, I will digress because I have a good story about this. I did this exercise once with a group, and then I went back about a month later, and we did a kind of follow up workshop. And somebody came up to me and said, "I've taken up golf since we did that exercise." And I said, "Oh, okay. What made you want to take up golf?" And she said, "When I'm on the golf course, no one can bother me. I'm in nature. It's just about me. My husband can't get hold of me. The kids can't get hold of me." And she said, "This is my time that's purely for me." So it's interesting the things that people can come up with to start to grow that foundation. So, just a couple of last thoughts. When you have that wedding cake on the left hand side, how do you do at work? When that wedding cake's like the one on the left, probably everything's that little bit easier. You're probably in your comfort zone at work. You can probably handle more difficult challenges. And how does it impact when that foundation is wobbly, when it's on the right hand side? Because bear in mind, this can shift. You might be in one place right now, and you might be able to reference back to a place where the cake might have looked different. But what happens when that foundation's wobbly? Maybe when your wedding cake's unstable, that's when you notice that you're feeling more stressed, feeling more burnt out. And our research has shown that when people are under stress, they don't think as strategically. So it affects strategic thinking, it affects problem solving, which slows down. People are less intuitive to others. If you think about it, when you're under stress, when you have that kind of upside down wedding cake, you're probably a bit more like this, only focusing on what is right in front of you. So less intuitive. So it really, really does impact. And if you think about maybe how this might have shifted and changed during the pandemic, and maybe how that's happened for your teams, has, let's say, working from home given teams more chance to build on that foundation or not? Were they using commute time to do something for themselves, or were they just working more hours? Could you see the wedding cake being more stable if you did come into the office a bit more? So you can see how you can start to work these conversations in, not saying with any agenda or anything like that, but it helps to get people to start thinking a little bit more about how they're best in themselves and also how that impacts on their work. So I recommend holding on to this drawing. Hold on to it to look back on. Let it be a reminder to you as to whether that foundation needs a little bit of support. And we're going to look at what those things are going to be in the third exercise today. So we're going to do a middle exercise, and then the third exercise today will be looking at what you can do to increase that foundation. So that was the first one. I'm going to, I can see a comment here and I can't see the full text. So not a great wedding cake, but a great activity. Thank you very much. Totally agree. Can be so difficult to remember. Yeah, it can be difficult to remember to give that energy back to yourself. I think that's why a visual exercise like this is so good, because you will go away now, and I know that I have people come up to me and they'll say, the wedding cake thing really stood out to me. So some of these exercises, they seem simple, but they can have a real impact on people, and you don't know how much people are kind of going to go away and take that in and go and think about it. So that was exercise 1. I'm going to try and get through the next 2 exercises in 15 minutes. And I think that's absolutely doable, because we've all got tennis to watch this afternoon, maybe at the same time as working. But that first exercise, it just really starts to get people thinking. It could potentially open up a conversation. So I hope you think that you can now go away and run that exercise again for your team. And yes, you might have to watch that section back. I'll mark them on the YouTube video when we edit it up, if I can, so that you can jump to that bit, watch it back, and then go and run it for your team. And the next exercise is specifically about managing stress. So this one is great for companies with, maybe you've been super busy recently. There's a really high workload. This is a very logical, kind of practical exercise. I think this is a good one if you've got a team who are sort of starting to spin out of control in a panic, or if you've got people that you work with that can get themselves in a bit of a tiz sometimes over, I don't know if tiz is the right word, over workloads. Because this one could also be done as a one-to-one with a manager, or with yourself. If you're HR, let's say, you could actually sit down with somebody and run this exercise as a one-to-one as well. But it's all about taking it back to logic, which I think is always a good thing to do when you're feeling stressed. So this is actually based on a model that was created in the 90s, called the demand control support model. And what it does is, the idea behind it is that it helps to decrease stress by gaining greater job control. And also it's about developing relationships with colleagues as well. So it will require, if you have participants take it, then it is a really great thing to do, maybe prior to appraisals, when they might be able to come and talk to you afterwards about it, or something like that. So what you'll need to do is start by dividing your page. So if you've got an A4 page, just divide it into 4 squares, landscape, however you want to do it. Just divide your page into 4 squares. Now, traditionally, this model is a 3-step model, but we've actually added, when I run this in workshop scenarios, I add an extra step. I add in a step 1, let's say, and that will go in the top left square. So we're going to start top left, and then I'll tell you how to work your way around. And what you need to write in the top left, obviously, if you're taking part right now, and do it for yourself right now, what is causing you stress that is a you issue? So what are you doing that is bringing stress on you? And I'll give you some examples. Are you very self-critical? So therefore you're driving your own stress because you're telling yourself that what you're doing is not good enough. That could be through high standards that you've got. Maybe you're really meticulous. You could have a bit of perfectionism. Perhaps you're getting distracted by things like the tennis. Perhaps you keep putting your TV on when you should be working. So that top left box, it's all about the stress that you are bringing on yourself. So, and I should have skipped ahead and showed you, this is kind of how you would lay it out. So we're looking at box 1 would be where you would pop those things in. Let me just go back a second. So what we're going to do, so hopefully everybody's starting to think, okay, what do? I know that personally, I can be a bit of a procrastinator. I sometimes have a bit of a habit of picking my phone up. I'm sure everybody will relate to this, and scrolling social media when I know I have something important that I need to focus on. I try to distract myself from it. What are things that you're doing that are you stress? Okay, and now you've filled in box 1, we're going to come to box 2. So now we're actually moving into this demand control support model, which maybe you're familiar with, maybe you've seen this before. And in box 2, what we're going to write down is the demands of the job. So demand, what is being demanded of you? Is it tight deadlines? Is it that you're expected to work long hours? Is there a culture within a company where you feel like you have to prove yourself? Do you get email overload? Are your targets too high? Is there a work-life imbalance somewhere along the line? And obviously, fill this in for yourself now. But if you were running this for your team, then what I think would be really good is that you would probably have some idea of what the demands of the job are. Even if it's obviously not the same role as yourselves, you'll know from the company. And you might be able to throw some things in there that are directly related to the company, where obviously as a facilitator, I'm just kind of thinking of things off the top of my head. So you've got the stresses that you bring on yourself in box 1. You've got the demands of the job in box 2. And then in box 3, that's where we're going to start to look at control. So we're going to look at the demands on the left-hand side, so boxes 1 and 2. And we're going to look at how you might now be able to take control of some of these areas. So, is there something that you can do to perhaps gain more autonomy in your work? Are you able to understand your manager expectations in a way that might cause you to be less self-critical because actually your manager doesn't want it perfect? Your manager just wants it done, and so that might help with that. Um, can you put an email system into place, in terms of kind of like maybe delaying sent emails, delaying received emails? Is that something you can look at? Can you block out time in your diary if you need to, if you're not getting that work life balance, for things like exercise, for you to actually take a lunch break, for you to be creative if you have work that needs that sort of deep focus? I talk about this a lot, but I really try hard not to book any meetings in my diary before 11 a.m. It's just a little technique that I introduced for myself. That works really well because I find most people go for a 10 a.m. meeting, and just that extra hour means that I get so much more done in my day before somebody else is demanding my time. Could you start to incorporate something like the Pomodoro technique when you have to do work that requires that focus? So instead of reaching for the phone or for social media, the Pomodoro technique is about working 25 minutes solidly and then taking a 5-minute break. Are you able to use your commute time differently? Is there anything that you can do? Let's say if you've just got a crazy workload and there's so much going on and you can feel those stress levels rising, is there anything that you can do to reduce decision fatigue? And we see this with people like Mark Zuckerberg always wears the same grey t-shirt and jeans. Obama does it. There's lots of people that do it. Reducing decision fatigue around what you have for lunch or your clothing can really make a difference if you've got high workload. How can you build more meaning into your role? So any of these things, I appreciate I'm just kind of throwing out suggestions, but do they help to tackle any of the things on the left-hand side? And if anybody's got any suggestions that they can share, please do, because I know somebody will always be inspired by what somebody else has to say here. Perhaps, and I think one thing which is potential right now, fear of losing your job. Is that something? Is that something that you can mitigate? Not being able to switch off because you're working evenings or you're kind of on your laptop a lot more. Are there any things you can do to separate work from home? All of these things. So really start to tackle how you can control these. Now, if you are running this session for an individual, try to let them think for themselves on this. Obviously, in a group scenario, you could have people call things out. I think that would be really helpful. With a one-to-one, if you were running this for somebody, perhaps you write down the answers and they think. I'm just trying to think of how this might help that person. What you don't want to do is feed them all the answers. Try and let them think for themselves. And then finally, in box 4, we've got support. So we've had the demands you're putting on yourself, demands that are coming from the job. We've had control, how you can take control of things that are in your control. And now we've got box 4, which is about support. So what can you do to ask for support? Can you go to your manager? Can you bring colleagues in? Can you buddy up with people? Do you just need time to vent? Do you need to get together with some colleagues and just have that time to get things off your chest? If you are a manager watching this, how can you start to help reduce some of these demands if you think actually that is quite a lot? Are there processes that you can fix? How can you give support? And also letting people know that they can ask you for help can obviously be a good starting point. So how can you put this model into practice? So I think this is really brought to life on a page now, and really enabled somebody to get out of that maybe frantic feeling, and they've got it all out onto paper, because I think people's mindset around stress is the biggest factor in how it will affect them. So if you've started to get it out all logically, they'll start to approach the stress in a more logical way as well. Like I said, the great thing about this exercise is if you're facilitating it for your team, it's specific. You can be more specific to your workplace. So something that's really, really useful there. I think as well as a collective, let's say you're a HR or wellbeing champion, if you're seeing demands of people, you're seeing a lot of the same thing come up for people, then that is something you could then address with management. Is there a culture issue somewhere that's kind of popping up in different people's pieces of paper? So how was that one? A bit more practical, but really, really useful to get it all out on paper. So I hope that is something that you might consider doing with your team. And like I said, great before an appraisal. Just I think a really useful practical exercise. So for the last one, this we're actually going to run. I'm going to run one of the most popular exercises that I've ever run in a workshop. I've had so much positive sort of feedback on this, but I don't know how well I'm going to be able to do it today, because I would normally share some music at the same time, and as we're live streaming, I might get penalized for sharing live music, so I might give it a little go. But the whole point of this exercise, it's fast paced. It doesn't give people time to overthink. It's supposed to be a go with your gut type exercise. I would say this is something great to do on a Friday at the end of a meeting. You can get some loud music on, and I would recommend something that's not got, I'd recommend something with a beat that has not got too much vocal on it. So when I ran this for the first time, I used the Chemical Brothers Go. I found an instrumental version. But yeah, there's different things. Maybe you can think of something that's just quite good, that's got that pace, that's going to have people working quite fast. So it is a really good overall exercise. And this gets people thinking about their own well-being, gets people thinking about self-regard, how they look after themselves. It starts them on this journey of kind of confidence building as well. So this one connects really well with that first exercise that we did, the wedding cake. So even if you ran both of these two on the same day, I think that would work really well. So are you ready? So let's go. I'm going to get myself psyched up for this one. This is definitely one that you'll probably want to watch back and have a think about. This exercise is almost a bit of a mind map. There's no right way or wrong way to do it. But what I would say is copy the screen. You can see that I've got self-regard in the middle. You could call it well-being in the middle. You could call it personal development in the middle if you're going to have this as the first exercise that you do with people. And then what I'm going to do over the next couple of minutes is I'm going to fire out questions. And every time I fire out a question, I want you to really quickly scribble 3 answers. If you can do 3, that's great. Sometimes people will think, oh, I can't think of anything. Just try and scribble something down. Go with your gut. And so I will start to play the music a second, and we'll see if we can get away with it. But this is how you would run it for people. So first question, my friends would describe me as, scribble your 3 answers. Let me see if this works. I don't know if this will play for you. Let me know if you can hear this. This is a bootleg version, so I might get away with playing it. So 3 answers, just like this. Now this page is going to get really busy, so keep your answers close to the question if you're writing the question down as well, which I would recommend. Write 3 if you can, but at least 1. Thank you, somebody's telling me they can hear the music. I don't want anyone saying, I don't know what to write, just scribble, scribble, scribble. Right, let's keep going before I get penalised. So the next thing, things I loved when I was younger. Tap into your inner child now. What did you love? What did you play? Could be anything. This might inspire you to go back to a childhood hobby, let's say. Turn this down a little bit. Or try something that you used to enjoy, perhaps. So three things, if you can, that you loved when you were younger. Next question. And if you're facilitating this, you want to be really high energy, have that music going, have people scribbling down really quickly. It would be much better to do this in person. So I'm always surprised when I ask people to list 3 things that fulfill them and they can't list anything. Now, it doesn't have to be deep. It doesn't have to be clever. What lights you up? What helps you to feel fulfilled and content? If you can make these non-work related, great. And we're going to try to get this kind of authenticity by having people scribble really quickly. So how are you getting on? I'm going to keep going. What are you good at? What is the first thing that comes to mind? Things I do well. So we're building on this now, and you might start to see some trends in what you're writing. Might be completely random, completely eclectic. Maybe you can have more than 3 things, but you can see how we're starting to really kind of pack this page. How are you getting on? Okay. I look after myself by. How do you look after yourself? How do you show up for yourself? It's okay if this stuff is self-care. I know that there are people out there who love bubble bath and a yoga session. If you don't feel like you do this at all at the moment, if your bottom tier of your wedding cake was really, really sort of thin, what could you do? Because your scribbles could be an intention, not just what you're doing right now. Okay, so we are getting there now. So, next question. This might seem a bit similar to other questions, and that is on purpose, things that make me feel good. So, if you can write something different, do. If you're writing things that you've already written, fine. But we're just kind of reinforcing this kind of positivity. Hopefully you can see what we're building here. A list of things that we can come back to, that we can take action on, that we can prioritize. So write whatever pops into your head. And let's go to the next one. We're nearly there, nearly there. So you could dream big with this one. I've always wanted to, or you can stay closer to home. It could be a tiny thing. Try and make it things that are achievable as well. You know, maybe go to space might be a little bit too big, but little things that you've always wanted to do. And these are things that you could actually go and take away and mark into your calendar as well. And then finally, I think this is the final question. This might be the hardest one. What needs to change for you to do some of these things? So thinking back to that wedding cake, how can you put yourself first? How can you give that energy back to yourself? What's getting in the way? So this can be physical. This could also be mindset. Oh, I think we're going to come to the end of the music. Yes, we are. And hopefully I've not been cut off. So this could be something in your own mindset. So do you need to take ownership of some of this? Actually, I'm looking at this wedding cake and I know I now need to take ownership of this. Do you need to put yourself before the things that are telling you you can't do what you should be doing for yourself? So that is the exercise. Now, you could take this kind of mind map, quick fire idea. You could write your own questions. You could do this in a slightly different way. But the idea, and hopefully what you have now, if you've been participating, is just a real collection of stuff on a page that could potentially inspire you to go and start working on your well-being, developing yourself, doing things which are going to give energy back to you. And obviously, as we've explored earlier on today, by doing that, it is actually going to help you, yes, at work, in your work performance, but also in your own life as well. So I've only run over by 5 minutes, so I'm doing okay. It's supposed to be 45 minutes every session this week. So we've done 3 short, very visual, very practical exercises today that could help somebody start their personal development journey. They're not incredibly deep. They are fairly easy. Hopefully everybody feels like they could go and run this for their team now. And I think it's all about helping people to understand well-being, the impact on work performance. That was the first one. Obviously, managing stress with that model for the second one, and then that self-regard piece, but kind of whole general well-being piece with that third one as well. So I will say that unfortunately, not everyone will buy into these initiatives, and that's fine. You will always get people on your team who are a bit more cynical, and you'll always get people that will embrace these things. But what I would say is just start. ask for willingness from the team. Ask them to be empathetic if you have wellbeing champions who are running these exercises or deciding that they're going to host one of these workshops. I know not everybody feels comfortable kind of standing up and leading a team in that way. Leaders can obviously model and embrace some of the things that we've gone through today as well. And I think that that will really help to make a difference. So how do you feel after those 3 exercises? I would love to know in the chat. I can see we've still got a fair few people here. Anything particularly that you want to go away and work on with your team or try? Any questions of how you can start this or anything like that? I know, and has it actually just been useful for you to go through them yourself? Just kind of take part. That might have been giving you some food for thought, perhaps. So yes, so that sort of brings us to the end today. 3 exercises. Hopefully, from the beginning, you start to understand why this stuff is important, why it's relatively simple, shouldn't have to cost anything. But if you can find ways to start building it into your meetings, wellbeing initiatives, even if it's once a month that you do something like this, or you can build it into appraisals. Thank you so much. That is an absolutely great one. Great for staff appraisals. Can definitely help make that appraisal conversation more meaningful as well. So thank you for that. It's just about starting, and it's about starting and not forgetting about it in 6 weeks or 6 months' time. Yes, people might be thinking, "Oh, what are they doing now?" But when you get going, then people might then start to embrace these sorts of initiatives. And there are so many more that you can do. Things like the Wheel of Life is a good one to look up, is a great one to run for a team, and just start to build these in 15 minutes perhaps once a month in a staff management meeting could really make a difference. So if you would like to find out more about us, obviously I'm from a company called FidlLeaf. We're a workplace wellbeing company. Yes, we host workshops and we also have the online platform, which obviously I've referenced a lot of our research today. Please do go and take a look at what we do. Obviously, this whole week is not about us. I've just run this first session. It's about all the amazing speakers that we have coming on today. And if you want to add me on LinkedIn, Sophie Coulthard, then you can do that as well. And then finally, just to remind you that we will be back tomorrow. And tomorrow at 1 o'clock, we will be looking at flexible working with Jess from That Works For Me. So she is a real specialist when it comes to flexible working, and also how to build shared experiences when teams might be dispersed or transgenerational. Is that the right word? Transgenerational? I don't know. And we're going to be looking at that Suki as well from Zing Groups. So it'll be really great to see you tomorrow. If you can't make it, everything is recorded, and you will get the full recording at the end of the week, probably the start of next week. So thanks for joining today. If you have got time to get some tennis on this afternoon, I know that there's some great people playing. I actually managed to go to a pre-Wimbledon event on Saturday and watch some tennis. That really got me in the mood for it. So yeah, but would love to see you here for the rest of this week at 1 o'clock. And yes, there will all be live conversations, live discussions, and we've got some really great experts joining us. So thank you very much. I think I'll leave it there. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And as ever, we'd love your comments, thoughts and feelings in the chat. But really hope that this has given you something to go away and think about. That's the whole point. That's the whole point of World Wellbeing Week, and that's the whole point of this summit. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a great day.